Hey everyone, Matt here from Herbal-House, and in this video we're here to talk about the HPS lighting kits that we have on offer. So we do have a few selections to choose from, and they're all based around the ballasts. So as you can see, we've got 5 different ballasts laid out in front of us, but the fundamentals of the kit are ballast, a bulb and a shade. So first of all, why would you want an HPS lighting kit? Well, the HPS lighting kit offers a high amount of light and intensity for a relatively low cost. The only trade-off with these are essentially the bulbs tend to wear out over a period of time, and they do generate a fair bit of heat. Being a very traditional style of lighting, they have proven their worth over the, to be honest, decades. So they definitely have their place among growers, and they still do deliver great results, especially with how cheap they are today. So in regards to the packaging, which is what I want to start on next, a lot of people would expect this to be turning up in very big or heavy boxes, but it's actually quite surprising how compact they are delivering these today. So what you'd expect to see is a briefcase looking style box here with a lovely handle on top, fragile tape to keep it all nice and safe, and there will be a delivery label on front. So what we've got in here is your shade, your bulb or bulb options, hangers, and your selection of ballasts all tucked away in here nicely. So it does arrive nice and safe, and in Herbal-House fashion, nice plain brown unboxing, just the way everyone likes it. Now to cover the actual brands of these particular ballasts, in our base kit we have the Four Seasons domestic version of their 600 watt ballast. Now the reason we call it the domestic version is simply because it's quite compact, and underneath there's actually a bit of clearance under the ballast, so you could sit it on a surface and it's not going to generate much heat into that surface. Not that you should have any problems, but for a lot of people that does really help. Next one along, we have the Four Seasons commercial ballast. Now in theory, these are actually built using very similar components. The idea is the casing itself has changed to suit commercial applications. And that is because it has a slimmer profile, and for a lot of commercial applications, they're going to want to tuck that in a very tight spot. And next one along, we have the Blackline commercial ballast. So these are a fan-cooled unit. Now keeping that in mind, it makes them perform very well for hot, dry climates. This is where fan-cooled units really do excel. Next along we have the Powerlux, and again this is a fan-cooled unit, so you will find that this will perform exceptionally well in hot, dry environments thanks to the fan cooling, because between these two they are going to be pulling a lot of air through them, which is going to be running them a lot cooler, at least on the internal componentry. And last but not least, we have the Quiet line. So this is the largest ballast of them all, and this is passively cooled. And if it wasn't a giveaway, it is these huge fins that they have on the ballast. So that's there, of course, for rejecting heat and keeping the ballast running as cool as possible. So while I will say this is, of course, a commercial orientated unit, as most of them are, you will find that this is a huge ballast by comparison for those who are running multiple or need to tuck them into a tight space. So keeping that in mind. Now, I did mention earlier, but not to forget that they all are, of course, dimmable, adjustable via the dimmer knob on the front, because it does make a huge difference for situations where you A, either need to run lower wattage, or B, you need to reduce the running heat of your grow space. So being able to drop them down does make a huge difference, and we did cover this in another video. You can run a 600 watt bulb at 400 watts or even lower and still retain very much the same performance as you would if you were changing the bulb out for itself. And here we have another key piece of the equation here, and that is the reflector shade itself. So as you can see, it's quite a large item here, but before we get into it, this is the bulb socket down the base here. This is going to be where you're screwing in your HPS or your metal halide bulb. Just make sure you screw it in nice and tight. And the purpose of this shade is to reflect any light that is being emitted up or not towards the plants and reflect it back down. So as you see here, this is quite a malleable and very lightweight shade. So the idea is you can effectively bend this to suit your grow space if it's smaller, or flex it further out if it's a larger grow space and you need more coverage. Now, just to note here, this is not actually blue. This is a plastic film protecting it from scratching up and things like that. Please remove that when you do screw your bulb in and fire it up, because if that melts with the bulb, it'll wrap around the bulb. It's just not a good time. So please keep that in mind. But effectively, this is there to house the bulb and reflect the light down towards your plants. Now, before we forget, on the back side here is your hanging mount. So these tabs just fold up and they give you the option to essentially clip it on and hang it from your grow space. This brings me on to our next point here, which is the sub option in the grow kit is for these adjustable hangers, because these hangers really do make it an absolute breeze to set this up. You're just going to hook them onto each end and it'll ratchet it up or down in your grow space. It makes setting it up nice and easy. Don't get me wrong, if you've got chain or string, it all works, but these are just really convenient, so we highly rate them and recommend them. So now that we've covered the shade, let's move on to the bulb options. Now, as standard for your HPS lighting kit, you are going to receive, of course, one HPS bulb here. So that's the skinnier looking bulb down here. And what that's going to do is emit a very orange light or a very warm light. So that's going to be focusing on your bloom enhancing growth or flowering. So what we find for a lot of people is we will offer the option here, which is the metal halide bulb, the MH bulb. And what that does is it gives you this bulb here. So that's more for your veg growth. And the idea is this produces a very cold or blue white light. So for a lot of people, that means that their plants will grow shorter and more condensed. That's the nature of the beast when it comes to these bulbs. Typically find with the HPS, the plants want to stretch and expand. And with the metal halide, the plants try to stay smaller and condensed, which is perfect for veg, but it is personal preference. So for a lot of people, they'll use either the HPS the whole way through or even a metal halide. It really is up to you and what your plants prefer. But we do give you the option if you want to stick with HPS. We allow you to add a second HPS bulb here. So that means that you can use this bulb to the end of its life, or if you ever had a problem, you can swap in the other one just to ensure you're staying up and running. Now, keeping this in mind with these bulbs, we do recommend you use a cloth when screwing them into the fixture, because you don't want to get any oils or contaminants on the bulb themselves. Because the bulbs run very hot, if there's anything on there, it can cause issues like hot spots and dramatically reduce the life of your bulb. So keeping that in mind, let's actually show you what these look like set up and running. Okay, so as you can see here, after our little montage of setting this up, we have a 600 watt HPS fixture up and running. So this is only a 1x1 tent, and we've adjusted the shade accordingly. So we've just tilted these edges in to put a little more emphasis on what's below in a tent this size. So for a lot of people, like I said earlier, you can easily adjust this to suit your situation. And sorry if you didn't notice, my really cool sunglasses are actually here to protect my eyes because it is quite intense. And of course, another thing to note, and a byproduct of these lights, is the heat that comes off it. So it really is quite toasty up there. So keep that in mind with your plants below. You do want to keep a bit of distance there to keep them from essentially scorching underneath these lights. But again, in wintertime, that's actually quite a good thing to have a fair bit of heat emitting from them. At least you wouldn't have to be supplementing in a heater, to say the least. So this is the HPS up and running. Let's give you a quick look at what the metal halide looks like. Alright, so we've swapped in the metal halide, or the MH bulb, as you can see. Now we have clicked this down to 250 watts on the ballast, just so you can sort of see, because these are quite bright, and with a cold white light, I hope you can understand and see that on the camera. There's a bit of contrast to the HPS bulb that we're running just a moment ago. So of course this is more orientated for your veg growth. Like I said earlier, it's going to cause the plant to grow shorter and stockier and not stretch out as much. So for a lot of people that's quite desirable and might be the bulb of choice for you. So just keeping in mind that we have installed the ballast up in the top of the tent there. So for a lot of people that's quite a common question, where should I put my ballast? With the tent frame, we actually do recommend installing the ballast inside the tent and hanging it from the frame above, because it's a really great way to keep it out of direct light. Some people, if you put it on the floor in your grow tent, it's going to get quite hot from the light emitted from the bulb. Don't recommend that. Putting it up nice and high so the heat rises and is sucked away generally by your ventilation equipment. So we highly recommend that. If you do install it externally of your tent, no problem. Just be aware that they do get pretty warm, to keep that in mind and not suffocate it by wrapping it up in a blanket or something silly like that. So just keep that in mind. So that wraps up the 600 watt lighting packages that we have laid out here on the table. So again, they are a really great way to jump into growing at a really cost-effective rate, because you get so much power and so much intensity for a really low investment cost. We highly recommend them for growers who are dealing in climates where it's quite cold, or they just need something to get them up and running on a tight budget. So really hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have any questions at all, please get in touch with us here at Herbal-House. Thanks for watching.